Look at my ass.
I'm literally in the other tab, and now I'm gonna look.
No, because I know you are because of what I'm wearing.
What are you wearing?
Can't see me.
The fuck are you talking about? I think this guy just wants people to look at his ass.
Hello?
Did not look at your ass.
I'm wearing booty shorts.
Okay, let me make sure this is streaming. Oh my god, Xbox, kill yourself. Okay, what happened last time? They were on the bridge, they were yapping, the Shinla trio, and then they heard. Then they were like, well, you have to think, maybe he fell into the lava and fucking died. And so Shillian was freaking out, and he was running, and he was trying to find him, and he was like tripping over himself. And then they heard swords clashing, and then they ran into Hua Chung fighting, um, what's his face? Junwoo. And Mei
Yeah.
Nanqing is there, and he like went over to them. The fetus spirit is there. Um,
Right.
Mei Nanqing went over to them and was talking about their swords, and Ming like broke Junwoo's sword, and then Junwoo took his original sword back from Shilian. So now he's fighting with Fangshin the sword, but it's named some other bullshit I don't remember. And Mei
Yeah.
Nanqing was like telling them about this story about this ghost that went to the kiln one year, and a bunch
Right.
of people got sucked into the kiln, and this ghost saved them by ripping out his own eye and forging a blood sacrifice, and then he ascended to heaven for that, and then he said fuck heaven, and he went right back down. And that was the forging of Ming, and that is why Hua Chang only has one eye. And then Shilian sort of starts joining the fight with him. Um, the sword, Hua Chung gets stabbed through the chest. Um,
Yeah.
and then Hua Chung was like, as if I'd let it stab you again in front of me. And
Yeah.
then Junwoo's like trying to use mind games, and he's like, is it my fault? You know, have you told him like what happened after Shenle fell? And Shilian's like having a panic attack, and he's like, he wasn't as good as Hua Chung thought he was. He wasn't untainted by filth, saintly and pure. If Hua Chung showed even a sliver of doubt after learning the truth, Shilian would probably never be able to live with himself, and he would never have the face to see him again. And then Hua Chung used his like earlier lines. He like turned Shilian's lines on him and was like, the one basking in infinite glory is you, the one fallen from grace is also you. What matters is you, not the state of you. No matter what happened in the past, I will never leave you. You can tell me anything. You told me this yourself. And then Shilian
I
starts to
kill
pull himself together.
myself.
What?
I said I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah. So then he starts to pull himself together a little bit. Um,
Doesn't Jinwoo like start going after
Here,
Shillian then?
this is how this ends. I'll end it here. Shilian started to pull himself together, but Junwoo puffed a laugh. No matter what happens, I will never leave you, he said the words, unhurried. My most faithful believers as well as my dearest friends. They also told me that once. The state preceptor's face changed, and Junwoo shot him a glance. But in the end, no one was able to truly do as they promised, as you can see. The state preceptor, unable to bear looking at him anymore, turned his head away. Believe me, Your Highness, won't you? Hua Cheng pleaded. It wasn't that Shilian didn't believe him, it was that he didn't dare to try. In the end, Shilian swallowed hard and forced himself to chuckle, but then he felt he shouldn't be laughing and hung his head. His voice trembled as he said, Sanlang, why don't you... Why... I'm sorry. I might... Hua Cheng stared at him for a moment, then began to speak. I actually... Before he could finish, a wave of intense killing intent lunged at them, and the two leapt apart. Some sense returned to Shilian, and the color returned to his ghastly pale face. What's with him? Why is he even... Faster? Stronger? Junwoo's speed and power had doubled, and were still growing, far greater than they'd been as White No-Face. They could sense the horrifying surge with every attack. Mu Ching noticed something else, and he shouted, Your Highness! Be careful, he's changed tactics! He's not attacking Crimson Rain-Sought Flower anymore. He's just going after you. Naturally, Shilian had also realized. Roye was the only weapon he had on hand, and it couldn't attack Fangshan head-on. It shrank back at the very sight of it. Fortunately, Ming had flawlessly blocked every strike Junwoo aimed at him. Now we're on the next chapter. Let me drink real quick.
I can't believe... Hold on. I can't believe how much of a sore loser Junwoo is.
Yeah. Yeah, you should try reading a Meat Bun novel. Holy fuck.
He's like the guy who gets tagged first in laser tag.
Yeah.
And just complains about it the whole rest of the night.
That's such a funny comparison. Alright.
That's him.
Chapter 129. I'm not going to read the title. The sword Fangshan emanated dominating power, and those watching from afar could already feel themselves shudder at the mere sight of it, let alone Shilian, who was being forced back by its attacks step by step. Hua Cheng had been more than capable of taking on White No-Face alone, but the emergence of Junwoo demanded both he and Shilian give it their all to even make an equal match. It was obvious that Junwoo was at an advantage in having Mount Tonglu as his main spiritual domain. Shilian could sense grievous power suppressing them. Junwoo was also protected by a layer of white armor. It was an ancient spiritual weapon he had personally forged, and it was practically impenetrable. He only needed to guard his head. Hua Cheng's scimitar was incredibly fast and precise, and Shilian also struck wherever he could. The two of them launched an all-out barrage against Junwoo, aiming at his neck, his heart, his back, his stomach, his shoulders. But nothing they did affected their opponent in the slightest. Stop wasting your strength! It's pointless! Mu Ching shouted. It's impossible to penetrate that white armor. Aim for his waist, just beneath his ribs on the right, Shilian exclaimed. Hua Cheng unleashed his scimitar again and struck where Shilian had instructed, but as expected it did nothing. I told you, it's pointless! Mu Ching shouted. Why don't you come up with a way to withdraw, and then we'll join the fight. Function! Where are your bow and arrows? Function was climbing around on the rocks trying to capture the fetus spirit, which was spitting wildly and slithering its tongue at him. When he heard the call, he answered, All right, I'm coming! However, Shilian instructed, Keep going, don't stop. Attack his right side, just below the ribs. Your Highness, Function shouted. That armor is formidable. It might not crack even after hundreds of blows from that scimitar. Nonetheless, Shilian was adamant. Don't worry, just listen to me. It won't take that many strikes. Hua Cheng didn't question him and continued to attack non-stop. Finally, a crack appeared at the spot the blade had been targeting. Blood spurted. Ming's blade had cut into Junwoo's stomach on the right side, just below his ribs. Gripping his scimitar in one hand, Hua Cheng stood before Junwoo and met his gaze squarely with a cold, severe glare. Meanwhile, Shilian made it to Junwoo's side, and Roye took the chance to bind Junwoo's hands, preventing him from blocking any more. Muqing was dumbfounded. How is that possible? How had Hua Cheng so easily cut through that ancient white armor? Pulling Royer taut, Shilian eyed Junwu. Did you forget? You and I had a fight 800 years ago. It dawned on Fengshen and Muqing. Your second ascension? When Shilian had requested that Junwu banish him once more, he also suggested they face off in a match. Although they promised each other that neither would show mercy, in retrospect, Junwu must have still held back. But Shilian used everything he had. He unleashed over 3,000 swords. Over 400 of them managed to stab Junwu, and of those 400, more than 100 had pierced this exact spot. His relentless barrage of swords broke through Junwu's impenetrable, ancient white armor and stabbed the right side of his abdomen, just below his ribs. That was the exact spot where Hua Cheng's scimitar made it through. Shilian had left a weak spot on Junwu's armor 800 years ago, and it only took 3 slashes from Hua Cheng to crack it. And Hua Cheng's scimitar was much fiercer than Shilian had ever imagined. It would surely inflict a critical hit when it cleaved into Junwu's abdomen. He had only just sighed a mental breath of relief when he heard the state preceptor yell, "That's no use, he—" Logically, Junwu's movement should have been hampered by this grave injury, but his expression didn't even change as he lowered his head to give the wound a glance. Just as Shilian sensed something was off, Junwu's hands moved slightly. Shilian heard something tear, and his hold on the band went slack. Royer had ripped. The white silk band dropped lifelessly to the ground, fully torn in half. An instant later, Shilian felt a hand around his throat, choking him as it lifted him off the ground. He heard Hua Cheng exclaim, "Your Highness!" but his voice suddenly seemed far away. Junwu's voice, however, was right beside him. "Shenle, did you really believe that I know less of being stabbed than you do? Did you think I would care?" "Stabbing him won't work, even if you do it hundreds of times," the state preceptor called to him. "It seems he cannot feel pain at all anymore." Shilian could take a long sword through the heart without flinching. Junwu was the same. When he heard the state preceptor, Fengshen lowered the bow he'd held drawn and aimed at Junwu. "What? Then even if we manage to land a hit, it won't matter?" "I have some more bad news," Muqing said. "From what I've observed, I suspect he can heal faster than we can injure him." "What?" Shilian could verify that. Junwu's wound had been terrifying. Anyone else would have been bisected, but he'd already stopped bleeding. "No need to be so surprised," Junwu said. "When you're constantly stabbed in the back, you'll die 1,000 times over if you don't force yourself to recover right away. But the two of you are certainly something," Junwu smiled. "In the past 800 years, I've only been wounded by 1 sword and 1 scimitar, wielded by the 2 of you. Crimson Rainsought Flower, stand back. You wouldn't want to see me wring Shenle's neck." Hua Cheng's face was dark, and a roaring tempest raged in his eye. But Junwu was dangling Shilian over the Heaven Crossing Bridge, and he would only need to release his grip to send Shilian plummeting into the fiery pool hundreds of meters below. A moment later, he reluctantly withdrew his scimitar, rested one hand behind him, and slowly backed away a few steps. Although he appeared calm, the scimitar at his side gave him away. Ming was extremely agitated. Its eyeball spun wildly and cast desperate looks at Shilian. Hua Cheng had to back up to the very edge of the Heaven's Crossing Bridge before Junwu was satisfied. Let me drink. Rip my King Royer.
He's dead? Ah!
Yeah, we'll have to keep reading. He got ripped in fucking half.
I just hurt myself.
Don't hurt yourself. That's good enough. Still holding him by the neck, Junwu locked eyes with Shilian. Then, without warning, he brutally slammed Shilian into the nearby rock wall. The collision was incredibly brutal. Shilian's head rang, and blood poured messily from his nose and mouth to flow down the contours of his face. He thought he could hear people screaming in alarm in the distance, but he couldn't tell who. The only thing he could hear clearly was Junwoo's placid tone murmuring in his ear. "Zhenle, does it hurt when your head is smashed against a wall?" Shilian couldn't quite process the question, so he didn't respond. Thus, Junwoo grabbed him and slammed him into the rock wall again before asking him once more. "Does it hurt? Does it hurt? Does it hurt?" With each repetition, he slammed Shilian into the wall so hard that Shilian started screaming. But what he screamed was, "Sanlong, don't come over here! I'm fine, I'm fine! Absolutely do not come over!" At least not yet. An opportune moment hadn't arrived. Huacheng was ready to charge over at the very first slam, but he hadn't taken 2 steps before Shilian told him not to approach, and so he forced himself to stop. His face had turned completely savage, and the veins on the back of his shaking hands were about to burst. Although Junwoo wore no expression on his face, his hand furiously rammed Shilian into the rocks as he asked him over and over again, "Does it hurt? Does it hurt?" "Your Highness!" the state preceptor cried out, but who knew for whom he was calling? Shilian's bloody hands pushed against the uneven rocky surface of the wall. He gritted his teeth as he roared, "It hurts!" Only then did Junwoo flash a satisfied smile and spare Shilian's poor head. He settled him on the ground. Shilian fell back clutching his ringing skull as tears and blood flowed uncontrollably down his face. Junwoo crouched next to Shilian and stared at him for a while. And then he raised a hand and stroked Shilian's head before gently wiping the blood from his face. The gesture was gentle and affectionate, like that of a father comforting a child he had just beaten black and blue. The scene made the hair on Fengxian and Muqing's necks stand up. Has he gone mad?" Huacheng's hand rested on his scimitar and his knuckles cracked. The pupil of Ming's eyeball shrank and went bloodshot. Shilian didn't breathe a word and simply allowed Junwoo to wipe him clean. Junwoo muttered to himself as he did so. "You silly child. If it hurts, why don't you turn back? Do you think that if you keep slamming into a wall, keep smashing yourself against it, it will crumble on its own? Why not change course instead?" "I won't turn back," Shilian stated. Junwoo raised his hand and slapped him, so hard and with such violence that it knocked Shilian to the ground with a loud thud. He was still dizzy when Junwoo picked him back up. In a tone that sounded like he had almost lost patience, Junwoo asked him, "Must you anger me like this? Let me ask you again. Will you change?" Shilian coughed twice, then spat out a mouthful of blood. "I won't." A crack finally appeared in Junwoo's gentle expression, a flicker of savageness. The state preceptor's face was grim. Seeing that this was going downhill fast, he shouted, "Your Highness! You never wanted to kill the boy. You really like him. You said so yourself. Have you forgotten?" Junwoo snorted. "If I didn't like him, I wouldn't have exhausted all my patience and tolerance on him alone for the past 800 years. He would have long since become part of the heavenly capital's foundation, trampled daily by thousands." A sudden fury seized him, and he turned to Shilian. "But he doesn't know what's good for him. Stubborn, capricious, unheeding of my every word. He just had to go against me. You won't change, will you? Very well. Then why don't we see if this wall will fall if your head is cracked open against it?" Then when he saw him lifting Shilian again, the state preceptor shouted to him hastily, "Your Highness! Your Highness! Your Highness! The little Highness is still ignorant! Just let him go this time. Let it go. He will understand one day." Junwoo spared a glance at him, and his chuckle grew grimmer. "Do you really think I've gone mad? Don't lie to me. He's not the one you think is ignorant. It's me. Isn't that right?" The state preceptor was taken aback, and Jinwoo continued. You invested so much of yourself into nurturing, teaching, and guiding him, purely because you hoped he could win against me. Also, you can prove that I was wrong and you were right. That you were all in the right. Also, you could cling to the illusion of the perfect crown prince of Wuyang and dismiss the Jinwoo standing before you now. Isn't that your goal? Did you really think I didn't know what you were thinking? It's not true, the state preceptor cried. Stop getting tied up in right and wrong, victory and defeat. I've never thought that way, ever. But Jinwoo couldn't bear to listen anymore. He raised his voice, his tone sharp. Forget it! Let me tell you right now, all of you can forget it. No one can win against me, especially him. Laughing maniacally, he dragged Shilian over the rocks again, slamming him into them as he bellowed. Will you change? Will you change? Will you change? As if he'd also gone mad, Shilian gripped Jinwoo's arm and roared, I won't! I won't! I won't change! Even though the beating was so excruciatingly painful that it made him see stars, he stubbornly endured. He adamantly refused to give the desired answer, adamantly refused to change, and oh, how gratifying it was. He'd been pent up for far too long. It was as though he'd been waiting for a chance like this all these years, and tears rolled as he screamed, I won't change! Even if it's painful! Even if I die, I won't change! I will never change! Now the tables had turned. Jinwoo was no longer driving Shilian mad. Shilian was the one pushing Jinwoo to madness. Eyes bloodshot, Jinwoo was about to punish him with another strike when he came to a sudden halt. He craned his neck to peer behind him. A long saber was stuck in his shoulder, and 8 long arrows made of sticks were neatly pinned into his back. Let me drink. Neither of those things mattered, for neither the saber nor the arrows had penetrated his white armor. However, his right hand was gone. That was the hand he'd been using to hold Shilian, and it was gone. All of it. Vanished from his wrist, the cut neat and clean. Shilian was also gone. When he turned his head, he sensed something hurtling directly at him, sharp winds whistling around its flight. With a swing of his left hand, he caught the projectile and realized afterward that it was his own right hand. Across the Heaven Crossing Bridge, Hua Cheng held a blood-drenched Shilian. With one hand, he gripped his scimitar in a reverse hold as he hugged Shilian's shoulders. He covered the wounds on Shilian's head with the other. Keep your filthy hands off him, he said in a chilling tone. Shilian's obstinate refusal to admit defeat had finally enraged Jinwoo enough that he let himself open. Jinwoo struck his hand back onto his wrist, twisted it a couple times to work out the kinks, and then plucked the arrows from his back. Something seemed to cross his mind, and when he glanced behind him, his eyes happened to land on the one still gripping the long saber, the pale-faced Mu Qing. Mu Qing was startled when their eyes met, but he forced himself to remain calm. That calm didn't last long. Jinwoo glanced at his shoulder. As expected, he idly commented. Compared to Shenle, you're still lacking. Mu Qing's expression shifted. The long saber in his hand abruptly dropped, and a moment later his face changed color completely. He yanked up his sleeve, only to find that the black cursed shackle around his wrist had tightened. The veins and nerves around it were bulging as if all the blood in his body was being drawn to that point. Function saw that Mu Qing was frozen in place and shouted at him. What are you doing just standing there? Run! Function, you little idiot! How can he run with his injured legs? The state preceptor berated. Oh, fuck! Function blurted. He'd completely forgotten. Normally, Mu Qing would have been so angry at this that his eyes would have been rolled all the way back into his head. But now he knew it'd be pointless even if he fled. Thanks to the cursed shackle on his wrist, it wouldn't matter where he ran. Function swore. He was about to go over to Mu Qing when Junwu hurled the arrows he'd plucked out of his back right at him. Function felt his chest go cold, and he looked down. All 8 arrows had been returned to him, neatly piercing his chest. Junwu walked languidly towards Huacheng and Shilian, but Huacheng didn't spare him a single glance. "Guga, Guga," he called to Shilian, who was still in his arms. Shilian had taken a brutal battering, and it took a while for him to blearily come around, his head still throbbing. But before his eyes even blinked open, he muttered, "Sanlong, are you all right?" Huacheng gazed at him for a moment, then suddenly pulled him hard into an embrace. "I'm completely fine," he replied softly. "Why don't you take a look at yourself?" Shilian clung to the one who held him. Although the hug was very tight, it did not press on any of his wounds. With great effort, Shilian opened his eyes and took in all the chaos around them. Muqing was frozen to the spot, one hand clutching the opposite wrist as if he was fighting for control against the blood-sucking cursed shackle. Judging by how pale he was, he might not hang on for much longer. Function, on the other hand, was slumped over the edge of the bridge. The 8 arrows hadn't pierced him completely through, but his injuries were still severe. The fetus spirit was howling in demonic elation, jumping up and down around him before stomping wildly on Function's face with one foot. Despite his fury, Function couldn't move for fear of worsening his injuries. Meanwhile, all of the Heaven Crossing Bridge had started to cave in. Stretch by stretch, block by block, they might go down with it at any moment. When he finally processed the situation they found themselves in, Shilian panicked and tried to stand. Huacheng helped him, and the two rose to their feet. They both gazed ahead. Junwu was languidly walking towards them. The firelight all around him made him seem much bigger than he was, and he cast an immense shadow. Staring hard at the approaching figure, Shilian wiped hard at the blood around his eyes, nose, and mouth. Jushin's blade coursed with spiritual power in Junwu's hold. The blade had a relaxed slant. At that moment, Junwu was so calm that he seemed almost a completely different person from the Junwu who had maniacally slammed Shilian into the rocks. "Shenle, you know that your defeat is assured." He understood Shilian too well. Junwu knew exactly how he would fight, and his spiritual power overwhelmingly dwarfed Shilian's. Shilian could sense that Junwu's battle aura and spiritual powers had grown even stronger before they exchanged a single blow. In the end, Mount Tonglu was his territory, and it was becoming more and more obvious just how it suppressed their abilities. Shilian knew that was probably true. He couldn't win. Even if he couldn't, he had to fight. "No," Huacheng interjected. "Your Highness, you can win." Stunned, Shilian stared at him, and Huacheng returned his gaze measure for measure. "You can win. You're stronger than him." His one eye was as bright as if it were ablaze, and he said with certainty, "Believe me, he's wrong. You're right. You're stronger than him. You're much stronger than him." Junwu let out a deep, quiet chuckle. Perhaps he was amused by Huacheng's naivete, or perhaps he was pleased by all the power he twisted so effortlessly between his fingers. He alone held the power of millions of believers in his grasp. Huacheng gripped Shilian's shoulders. "So what? They're millions of fools. They're all useless trash. But for you, one person is enough." One person was enough? Shilian hadn't yet wrapped his head around that before Huacheng pulled him close. His eyes widened as spiritual power exploded and rushed in. This was the most overwhelming transfer of spiritual power he'd ever experienced. Even the wraith butterflies and molten vengeful spirits all around them felt its terrifying intensity. One by one, they began to explode, shrieking as they burst into nothingness. Shilian's fingers were practically convulsing. His legs shook so badly that he was about to fall to his knees. In his mind, he cried again and again, "Stop! No more!" But Huacheng's hand was firmly locked behind his head, not letting him leave, refusing his refusal. A long time passed before Huacheng finally released him, and his throat relaxed. Shilian's knees buckled, and he dropped to the ground. His hands flew out to support him, and he managed, with great effort, to keep himself from falling over completely. There's a picture of them kissing that I'll send. Hold on, let me keep reading real quick. Jinwoo paused his steps and stared at them, his expression severe. Function, who was lying some distance away, and said with disbelief, "Your Highness, you're... Reaching out with trembling hands, Shilian felt his own neck. But there was nothing left for him to feel. Hua Cheng had poured too much spiritual power into him, so much more than the cursed shackle could ever hope to restrain. The two shackles that had fettered him for 800 years had shattered. Let me show you them kissing. Romance.
Yeah. There's tongue in that.
There is tongue in that.
You can tell.
Can I take Scout out real quick and then we can do the next one? It's her pee time. I'll be right back.
Ugh.
Uncork me.
I,
Scout's like reverse sneezing, like she fucking is choking. I'm like, are you good?
no.
Are you okay? Lie down, please. Freaking me out. Alright. We gotta do one more. Okay. This chapter's really good. I'm also not gonna read the title.
Okay. What was the title of the last one? Can you tell me?
Let me reverse. Put it in reverse, Terry. 129. Crack the white armor. Curious magic shatters the cursed shackles.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How is that possible? Mooching muttered. How can there be so much? To shatter cursed shackles with spiritual power alone, it was completely unheard of for anyone to manage such a feat. Shilian was slumped on the ground, but Hua Cheng pulled him to his feet. Gaga, try fighting again. At the same moment, Junwu lunged at them with his blade drawn. Without thinking, Shilian raised his hand to slap it away. Clang! Jushin was almost sent flying. This strike was something completely different. Shilian stared at his hands, feeling a little dazed. It had been hundreds of years since he felt like this. Indomitable, barely able to control his own strength, each step shaking mountains. One step to cross 1,000 miles, one step to ascend to the heavens. He'd almost forgotten that he was ever like this. He clenched his hand, then violently punched Junwu in the face. Hold on. My fucking cord here.
He's sick and tired of his laser tag complaints.
Throughout their battle so far, Junwu's face had remained untouched. When the punch landed, a drop of blood finally flowed from the corner of his lips. He thumbed it away and gave it a glance. The next second, he threw Zhu Xin aside with a toss of his hand. He was going to fight Shilian with bare fists. Shilian threw another punch, but Junwu caught his wrist and twisted it around. Agony spiked through Shilian's arm as it dislocated with a crack. However, he instantly popped it back into place. He struck again, but his fist was again seized by Junwu. Seeing that things still weren't going well, Shilian considered snatching up Fang Xin, which had been tossed away. But Junwu predicted he'd try that and blocked his path. However, Junwu had forgotten that Fang Xin and Mu Qing were still behind him. Although they were both so injured they could hardly move, they had hatched a plan to sneak around and grab Fang Xin. They moved extremely lightly and stealthily, yet it was as if Junwu had grown eyes on his back, and he sent a palm blast behind him. The bridge under their feet cracked and crumbled, and they both fell with it, plunging towards the lava stream. At the last moment, a hand caught Fang Xin's boot, and Mu Qing and Fang Xin... A hand caught Fang Xin's boot, and Fang Xin caught Mu Qing's boot. When Fang Xin looked up, he cried, "What the fuck? What the actual fuck? State Preceptor, your elderliness, please don't ever let go, all right?" It was, in fact, the State Preceptor who got them. Veins were bulging violently on his forehead. "So you do know I'm too old for this. Hurry and climb up, then." When Junwu smashed that section of the bridge, Shilian raised a hand to grab it and keep it suspended in midair. He wanted to lift it a bit further, but Junwu wouldn't give him the space. And so the three of them were hanging a mere dozen meters away from the churning lava. They could even hear each bubble pop. Mu Qing especially was in a terrifying position, dangling at the very bottom of the chain, and worse, upside down. If they weren't careful, his head would get a lava bath. Steam had boiled Mu Qing's face as red as hot coal. "Quick, pull me up!" he cried. But the two above him didn't manage to yank on him twice before he shouted again, "Wait, don't pull me up!" "What do you want?" the State Preceptor cried in exasperation. "Are you for real? Fine, I'm letting go," Fang Xin yelled. "What the fuck? Fucking let go for real, I dare you!" Mu Qing cursed. He gestured below. "Look down! Look, the sword!" Only then did they notice the black jade longsword that was slowly sinking in the heart of the lava stream, right below them. It was Fangshin, the sword they'd been trying to steal before Jinwu shook them off the bridge. As if he desperately wished he were Gibbon, Mooching reached out and crazily swung his arms at the sword. But he couldn't reach it, no matter how he tried. I forgot about this
What?
part. I completely forgot about this stupid fucking part. Lower me down a bit more. Just a bit more and I can get it. The veins on the state preceptor's forehead were throbbing even harder now. Don't overdo it, you little pair of brats. I'm only an old sack of bones. As he said that, he lowered the boot in his hand, and Mooching's face drew another notch closer to the surface of the lava. His hair slipped loose, and the ends were set alight. Fucking hell, your hair's on fire! It's gonna burn! Function exclaimed. Thankfully, Mooching had finally pulled the sword out of the stream. He tossed the sword towards Shilian, sending splashes of lava along with its flight, and then began frantically slapping away the patches of flame on his hair. Shilian, catch! Shilian swung his arm upward and caught Fangshin by the hilt. As for the state preceptor, he was at his limit. I can't do this anymore. Both of you, get up here now! Function saw that the state preceptor was trembling and realized things were going bad. He yanked at Mooching and flung him higher. Enough of all your yammering and dilly-dallying! Taking issue at being hurled around like this, Mooching was winding up for a major fit. But before he could begin, dozens of molten vengeful spirits lunged out of the lava pool. Like fish leaping out of water, the molten vengeful spirits surged upwards and caught Function around the chest. If it wasn't for the spiritual light shielding his body, he probably would have been burnt to ash. Earlier, Function's arrows had sent the spiritual spirits running scared, but with hearts full of spite, they had stealthily dived below the lava's surface, following him all the way here, and hid until they got a chance to drag him down. The state preceptor was also hauled forward by the sudden increase in weight and began to slip. It was now Mooching's turn to be at the very top of the chain, and he caught the state preceptor by his boots. Function was already injured, and there were still a few arrows in his body that he'd forgotten to pull out. Although he fought the vengeful spirits with his bare fists, he was mindful that the people above him might lose their grip if he fought too hard, and so it was a very passive bout. More and more molten vengeful spirits gathered down below, climbing atop and over one another as they clung to Function. It was almost as if they were having a tug-of-war against the state preceptor, Mooching. Both sides had significant strength, and Function would surely be torn in half if this continued. Can we just get this over and done with? Function roared. Shut up! Mooching yelled back. Suddenly he felt the weight he was holding lighten. The vengeful spirits had finally let go, so he quickly pulled the other two up to safety. Function panted harshly, still visibly shaken. The shrieks and roars of the vengeful spirits continued to echo from below. When they looked down into the pit, Mooching and the state preceptor said in unison, Function, it's your son! Sure enough, a blanched creature was hopping among the red-hot molten vengeful spirits and crazily tearing at them with its teeth. The molten vengeful spirits were all ancient ghosts, at least 2,000 years old. Plus, they had banded into groups. Why would they be afraid of some little minion that wasn't even a baby? Even as it continued to scratch and bite, the fetus spirit's once chillingly white body was painted crimson red with burns and blood from head to toe. It was howling in a ghastly voice, not pitiful in the slightest, and inspiring only horror, but Function exploded in outrage. A bunch of adults bullying a child! How fucking shameless! So, come here! The fetus spirit couldn't defeat so many vengeful spirits, and fear had already sprouted in its heart. Hearing that someone was going to stand up for it, it let out a strange cry, and jumped onto Function's shoulder. With longbow in hand, Function yanked the arrows from his own chest, and shot round after round, overturning the lava stream with their explosive impact. As he did so, the fetus spirit hopped and screeched on his shoulder like it was jeering and cheering. Shilian saw that they had escaped danger, and he finally relaxed. But just as he was about to focus on fighting Jinwu again, he felt his chest tighten. Jinwu had seized him from behind, locking him in place. Haven't I told you before? Where do you think you learned all your moves? I know everything about you. Let me drink. The sillies.
Fucking time.
Coming to this after reading the Meat Bun novel, I'm like,
This is nothing.
I want to thank this author for having the sillies. They will not let you have the sillies in the other.
Is there any silly at all?
I mean, there's
Well, I
Murong
guess
Lian
there's,
being a bitch.
yeah, but it's not.
If Shilian couldn't fight his way out of this hold, he was going to end up dead. But any move he could come up with to break free, Zhenwu would have already thought of too. Just then he heard Hua Cheng call out, "Guga, don't be afraid. You must know a move he doesn't. A move only you can use and he can't." A light turned on in Shilian's mind. Did he have such a thing? Yes, he did. If he couldn't break free, then he wouldn't. He turned in Jinwoo's arms to face him and locked his own arms around his opponent. "I bet you don't know about this," he declared, enunciating each word. Gripping Jinwoo tightly, Shilian carried him to the solid rock wall and slammed him against it with enormous force. He put all of his power into the blow. Amidst the rumbling and crashing of rocks, he heard something breaking. The sound had come from Jinwoo. His white armor had shattered. At the same time, Jinwoo released him with a roar of outrage. "Get lost! Get lost, all of you! Get lost!" When Shilian saw it, a chill went down his spine. The things he saw, the things that just made Jinwoo go mad, were faces. Those 3 faces had emerged once more. Raising his sword, Shilian pierced Jinwoo's heart and nailed him to the rock wall. Blood spurted from Jinwoo's mouth. Shilian had infused as much spiritual power as he could muster into the strike, and exploded the instant Jinwoo was stabbed. No matter how strong their healing ability was, no one could recover from that blow. The wall collapsed. Jinwoo had been pinned to it at first, but once it crumbled, he was brought to the ground with it and sprawled in the rubble. Yet still he hadn't given up. His hand seized Fang Shin's hilt, and he moved to write something upon the blade. Some kind of spell that they had clearly better stop. But just as Shilian raised his hand, the state preceptor rushed over. "Your Highness! Let it go! Let it go!" Shilian stopped. He wasn't sure which one of them the state preceptor was calling for, or whom he was begging to let go. Jinwoo coughed out another mouthful of rage-filled blood. "Get away from me!" The state preceptor knelt by his side. "Your Highness, let it go. Really, let it go. Continuing this fight is pointless." "You don't understand anything! Get lost!" Jinwoo yelled. "You're right, I don't understand," the state preceptor said. "It's been so many years. You've been a god and you've been a ghost king. Everyone who deserved to be killed is dead. All you've ever wanted is in your grasp. So why are you doing this to yourself? What exactly do you want? What do you want to prove?" Hearing this, confusion flashed across Jinwoo's face. But his daze didn't last long, and he violently gripped the state preceptor by the neck. "Stop trying to lecture me. You have no right to lecture me," he snarled. "No one has the right." Little strength remained to Jinwoo right now, so breaking free of his stranglehold would have hardly been difficult. Shilian was about to save his master when the state preceptor waved, signaling for him not to move. "Oh, Your Highness," the state preceptor continued. Jinwoo glared at him coldly, but his hand didn't loosen. Even if Jinwoo didn't have significant strength, the wringing the state preceptor's neck was still an easy task, and he was still in considerable danger. However, he just let Jinwoo choke him. "When I set out to teach His Royal Highness, it was never my intent to nurture a version of you who had never walked the wrong path, or to use him to humiliate you. He's his own person, and you are your own," the state preceptor said. "You were different people all along, with different paths, and that's the most natural thing. I've told you that before, but you didn't believe me. How about now?" Jinwoo stared at him, not saying a word. "I just genuinely, really miss Your Highness," the state preceptor said. "I miss our old kingdom of Wu Yong. I miss everyone from back then. I miss the days before we ascended. That's all." "It's been so many years," the state preceptor added. "Just watching you makes me tired. Very tired." How about you? Aren't you exhausted? As the number one martial god of the three realms, Jinwoo's appearance and poise had always been perfect and untainted by filth. Only now, when all the light had faded from him, did Shilian notice that Jinwoo's complexion was overly pale, even without those three faces. His contours were much too cold and hard, and the faint dark circles below his eyes made him appear indescribably gloomy. There was none of the gentle kindness he'd emanated when spiritual light had illuminated his form. But even if he looked sickly, he finally looked alive. Your Highness, you've been defeated. Now set yourself free, the state preceptor said gently. Have I been defeated? Jinwoo sounded a little lost. The forceful wave of spiritual power had broken through the domed ceiling of the rocky cave, and scattered rays of wan sunlight peeked in. A few faint threads of rain drifted down. As Shilian stood over Jinwoo, who lay sprawled on the ground, he noticed a trace of relief on his face, like a heavy burden had finally been lifted. He couldn't help but wonder. Deep down, perhaps Jinwoo had wished for someone to defeat him, for someone to put these relentless eons of brokenness and madness to an end. A moment later, Jinwoo asked, That move, what is it called? Shilian raised his sleeve and wiped away the blood on the side of his face. Shattering boulders on one's chest. Jinwoo was briefly taken aback. It seemed that made him think of something. Finally, he chuckled and sighed as he closed his eyes. Beautiful. He didn't utter another word. Everyone could tell fatigue had overtaken him. Shilian finally removed his hand from Fang Shen's hilt. He had no idea what to do next, so he unconsciously turned to Hua Cheng. Hua Cheng was still standing in the same spot, upon the only stretch of the heaven-crossing bridge that hadn't yet collapsed, and had been quietly waiting for him for a long time, arms crossed. Seeing that Shilian had turned to look at him, he met his eyes and smiled. Let me drink. The state preceptor sat unmoving next to Jinwoo. Your Highness, all of you should go now. He clearly didn't intend to get up. Master, are you not coming? Shilian asked. The state preceptor shook his head. I'll keep His Highness company. After all, I didn't stay by his side back then. The rain was coming down harder now. It scoured Jinwoo's resting face, washing away the blood that flowed from his wounds. As it poured across his skin, Shilian thought that the 3 lesions on his face had faded somewhat. Maybe it was his imagination. After a moment of silence, Shilian took the bamboo hat from his back and lowered it over Jinwoo's face to shield him from the rain. The cursed shackle on Mooching's wrist had broken off on its own, and Mooching punted the thing into the lava with a swift kick before forcing himself back into his cool, calm demeanor. The fetus spirit jumped down from Function's shoulder and crawled to Jinwoo on all 4 limbs to touch him cautiously. Its attitude was completely different than when it was stomping on Function's face, and Function stomped his own feet in anger at the sight. Shilian, however, didn't care for anything else. With a battered face, he dashed straight for Hua Cheng like he had been reborn. In truth, he'd only barely escaped death, and pounced on him. Sun Long! Hua Cheng had just reached a hand out to Shilian when his tackle pushed him back a step. He wrapped his arms around him and smiled happily. Gaga, you see, I told you that you'd win for sure, didn't I? He lifted Shilian's face and carefully inspected it, then sighed. You've gotten yourself all scrapped up again. A tiny silver butterfly fluttered where his fingers caressed, and the cuts faded. Shilian smiled happily in response. I'll be more careful next time. Hua Cheng arched his brows, pretending to be cold and harsh. There is no next time. After a pause, Shilian withdrew his smile and said seriously, Sunlong, back when we were inside Mount Tonglu, I said that I wanted to tell you something after we got out. Do you still remember? Hua Cheng smiled. Of course I remember. I remember everything Gaga tells me. Shilian hung his head. It took a moment before he finally gathered his courage and began to tell him the truth. Earlier, Jinwu divulged some bits of information about this. To be honest, I should have told you a long time ago. I just could never find the nerve, because I was afraid of how you'd react when you found out. Found out that your highness almost became the white-clothed calamity, right? Hua Cheng continued for him. You? Shilian murmured in shock. Hua Cheng didn't answer him directly. Instead, he bent one knee and knelt on the ground before him. He raised his head to gaze at him with a broad smile. How's this? Gaga, do you remember now? How could he not? Back then, the nameless ghost had always bent the knee to him just the same. A phantom image of that pale, smiling mask overlapped with Hua Cheng's current smiling face. Shilian's heart quivered, his knees buckled, and he slumped to the ground in front of him. Sunlong, it was you all this time. Hua Cheng let out a small laugh as he continued to kneel, and his remaining eye gazed deeply at Shilian. Your Highness, I've always watched you. Shilian could still only utter one word. You. He finally understood what all those seemingly unintentional words from Hua Cheng had meant. So this was it. He had never imagined that Wu Ming was Hua Cheng. He knew everything. He had seen everything. He had been there all along. All at once, thousands of emotions and millions of words swarmed into his head. There was gratitude. There was shame. There was heartache. There was wild joy. But above all else, there was incurable love. Shilian's heart was so full it was going to burst, but he could not squeeze out a single word to express himself. He could only tackle Hua Cheng forcefully with a cry of Sunlong. It was as if that was all he knew to say anymore, and he cried it again. Sunlong! Hua Cheng fell over with the tackle. He sat with Shilian on the ground, embracing him and laughing heartily. All his fears and worries had been swept away. Shilian circled his arms around Hua Cheng's neck tightly, laughing and laughing, but feeling like he was going to cry. But before his tears could fall, he suddenly noticed something was very wrong. Although Hua Cheng was a ghost, his body had never been any different from that of an ordinary human. And yet as Shilian held him now, his vivid red robes were going transparent. Shilian grabbed him, demanding in alarm. Sunlong, what's going on? Hua Cheng still seemed at ease. It's nothing. I've just overdone it a little. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Shilian asked in shock. How can you call this nothing? It was the spiritual power, all that spiritual power. When Hua Cheng transferred his power to Shilian, he always gave without restraint, as if he were an infinite source, as if all of it were free for Shilian's taking. He just kept smiling, ever cheerful, never treating it like a burden. But his spiritual power wasn't an inexhaustible as sand carried in by the rolling waves, so it couldn't truly be endless. He wouldn't blame Hua Cheng for failing to say anything sooner. Shilian could only blame himself for failing to notice. Panicked and full of remorse, Shilian cupped Hua Cheng's face. I'll return it to you, he said, then he kissed him. Function and Mooching had been on their way over, but when they saw the scene before them, they hurriedly backpedaled dozens of meters to give them the space to do what they needed to do. The cursed shackles were gone, so Shilian desperately tried to transfer all the spiritual power he could muster to Hua Cheng in the hope that he'd recover soon. He kissed him for a good while. But when he let go, the sleeves of Hua Cheng's red robes and his silver vambraces were still translucent, half transparent even. Shilian was shaken, fear overtaking his mind. He unconsciously reached out to cup Hua Chung's face again, leaning in to kiss some more, but Hua Chung cradled Shilian's face with swift hands and gave him a small peck with smiling lips. Although I'm happy Gaga is so forward, there's no need to give me any more spiritual power. But if Gaga isn't just lending spiritual power, if he simply wants to kiss me, I don't mind at all. In fact, the more the better. I welcome it with open arms. Shilian gripped him tightly on the brink of falling apart. What's going on? I'm just taking a little break, that's all, Hua Chung replied. Gaga, don't be scared. Shilian clutched his head. How can I not be scared? I'm going to lose my mind! Hua Chung was the sort of person who would never let Shilian see him like this. If it wasn't a serious problem, so serious he could no longer hide it. Spiritual power so abundant it could shatter 2 cursed shackles. Just how much would that be exactly? It would hardly be an exaggeration to say it'd require power as bountiful as the sea. So how could Hua Chung claim he was fine? They went through so much hardship to sort out this mess and tie off all the knots. They'd reopen the lines of communication between him, Feng Xin, and Mu Qing. The cursed shackles that had bound him for 800 years had been shattered. Everything he'd always wanted to confess to Hua Chung had already been said. Yet when Shilian turned to run into Hua Chung's arms with a face full of smiles, what greeted him was a Hua Chung who was about to fade away. How could he not be scared? He was going to go mad with fear. Noticing something was wrong, Feng Xin and Mu Qing called out from afar. Your Highness, what happened? They jogged a couple of steps in his direction, but they paused halfway when they sensed that they shouldn't interfere so carelessly right now. In that moment, Shilian had stopped caring for anyone else. He wore an expression of pure terror as he gripped Hua Chung, and his heart had almost stopped beating. What do I do? Hua Chung sighed quietly and extended his arms, once again folding Shilian into his embrace. Your Highness, I've always watched you. That was the second time he'd said it, but his voice was softer and gentler than before. Mind blank, Shilian clutched the red robes at his chest. I know, but what should I do now? Hua Chung's long, slender fingers gently combed through Shilian's mussed hair. Your Highness, do you know why I refuse to leave? Shilian couldn't understand how Hua Chung could still be so calm at a time like this. He, on the other hand, was panicking so hard he was trembling. Completely at a loss, he still blankly said, Why? Because I have a beloved who is still in this world, Hua Chung replied quietly. Shilian was slightly stunned. He'd heard that somewhere before. My beloved is a brave, noble, gracious, special someone, Hua Chung continued. He saved my life, and I've looked up to him ever since I was young. But I wanted to catch up to him and become even stronger for his sake. Although he might not remember me well, we never really talked. I want to protect him. He gazed at Shilian. If your dream is to save the common people, then my dream is only you. Relying on his memory, Shilian asked with a trembling voice, But you won't be able to rest in peace like this? I pray to never rest in peace, Hua Chung replied. In that instant, Shilian's breathing completely stopped. Frozen in this moment, he could faintly hear 2 voices, one questioning and the other answering. If your beloved knew you couldn't rest in peace because of them, they might feel troubled and guilty. Then I just won't let them know why I haven't left. If you meet too often, they'll find out sooner or later. Then I won't let them know I'm protecting them either. That ball of ghost fire, the weak little ball of ghost fire he bought for a few pennies on that lantern night long ago. The ghost fire who wanted to pull him up from the graves on a frozen winter's eve. The ghost fire who tried to shield him from White No-Face and wouldn't let him go near danger. The ghost fire who had screamed in torment on his behalf as 100 swords pierced his heart. Your Highness, I understand your everything, Hua Chung said quietly. Your courage, your despair, your kindness, your pain, your resentment, your hate, your wisdom, your foolishness. If I could, I would have you use me as your stepping stone, the bridge you take apart after crossing, the bones you need to trample on your climb, the sinner who endures the agony of a million knives. But I know you won't allow it. As he spoke, the maple red of his robes continued to fade away. Shilian tried to grab hold of him with shaking hands. He never stopped trying to transfer spiritual power to him, but even that couldn't prevent Hua Cheng from fading. His vision was going blurry, and his words staggered from his lips. "All right, don't say any more. I get it, but don't be like this, all right? Sanlang, I borrowed so much spiritual power from you that I haven't repaid. And I'm not done telling you all the things I wanted to say. There's still so much. It's been so long since anyone listened to me talk. Won't you stay? Don't do this. I won't be able to take it. Twice. It's happened twice already. I really don't want there to be a third time." Hua Cheng had already vanished from this world twice because of him. But Hua Cheng only replied, "To die in battle for you is my greatest honor." Those words were like a fatal blow. Shilian could no longer hold back the tears in his eyes, and they began to pour. As if he were hanging on to the last thread of his life, he pleaded, "You said you would never leave me." But Hua Cheng replied, "There is no banquet in this world that doesn't come to an end." Agony constricted his heart and throat, and Shilian couldn't speak another word. He bowed his head and buried it deep in Hua Cheng's chest. Yet soon after, he heard Hua Cheng say above him, "But I will never leave you." Shilian's head shot up. "I will come back," Hua Cheng said. "Your Highness, believe me." Although his voice was firm, his pale face had also begun to fade. Shilian wanted to touch his cheek, but his fingertips only slid through air. Startled, he locked eyes with Hua Cheng once more. Hua Cheng's gaze was both gentle and blazing. His remaining eye was filled with love as it stared at him silently. He said something, but there was no sound from his lips. Refusing to give up, desperate to hear him, Shilian reached out with both hands to grab him and yank him deeper into his arms. But before he could do so, the one he was holding, and the one holding him, disappeared. In an instant, Hua Cheng shattered into thousands of silver butterflies right before Shilian's eyes, transforming into a breeze of twinkling stars that he could neither embrace nor hold. Even as his arms came up empty, he maintained that hugging position, not moving a limb. He couldn't tell if he hadn't come to his senses yet, or if his body simply couldn't move anymore, but he stayed there, kneeling, amidst the dream-like array of butterflies, his eyes wide. As they looked on from a distance, Fengshen and Muqing had never imagined that this was how things would play out. Both their faces paled as they rushed forward. "Your Highness!" Fengshen was the first to arrive. "How did things go so wrong out of nowhere? Wasn't he fine just a few minutes ago? Was it because of the cursed shackles?" Muqing hobbled up right behind him. He couldn't jump, so he instead yelled at the silver butterflies. "Crimson Rainsaw Flower! Don't mess around! If you're not dead, then come the hell out!" Naturally, the silver butterflies did not answer him. They fluttered erratically, flapping their wings and rising towards the sky. Fengshen reached out to pull Shilian up, but he remained weighted to the ground like a stone. Fengshen didn't know what to do anymore. "Is there some way we can help? Do you need spiritual power? Can he be saved? What should we do?" Muqing, however, had already figured out what had happened. "Drop it. Just shut your mouth. We can't do anything at this point." The air was alight with a shimmering, twinkling glow. The butterflies' wings sparkled just as they had during their first reunion after 800 years apart. A silver butterfly drifted over and lightly brushed the back of Shilian's hand, his cheek, his forehead. Its actions were full of affectionate longing, as if they were whispering its goodbyes. Shilian numbly extended a hand and let it rest there. The silver butterfly fluttered its wings in delight, and sure enough, it lingered for him. But it, too, couldn't last. It wasn't long before it scattered on the wind like the rest. However, in the spot where it had perched on Shilian's third finger, there was still a bright, vivid red string. We'll stop there, and I'll send you an image of Hua Chang disappearing. Yeah. It's rough, buddy.
Ah!
I was like in it, but blurry in the background, I could see you like suffering. Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck!
And then we'll finish Sunday.
I knew some bullshit like this.
Yeah, I knew you. Like as soon as you were
Always
like,
happens,
yeah, as
bro.
soon as you're like, I'm scared of that Hua Chang's gonna die, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, because this is what happens. It's always a bitch fucking
It's always a bitch fucking.
God. Yes.
Bro. The
Great, that's
quotes in this
exactly what I
chapter
wanted to
alone.
see. Yeah. Well, we should kill ourselves.
If your dream is to save the common people, then my dream is only you. Let's see. Let's see how many people have that highlighted. 1,173 other people highlighted this part of the book.
Alright. I forgot what moment. I think it was when he fucking knelt down that I went like... It was too much. It was
All
too
at
much.
once, thousands of emotions and millions of worms swarmed in his head.
Yeah.
There was a gratitude,
It's got
there was gratitude, there was shame, there was heartache, there was wild joy, but above all else, there was incurable love. 1,092 people.
Ah!
I love that quote. What else was there? He was talking about his noble, gracious, special someone.
Yeah.
If I could, I would have you use me as your stepping stone, the bridge you take apart after crossing, the bones you need to trample on your climb, the sinner who endures the agony of a million knives, but I know you won't allow it. 1,075 people. So many good ones. Him realizing that he was there when he got stabbed. Woo!
It's...
And then even Function and Mooching were like, oh. They were like, wait. Got any predictions for the end of the book?
No! Don't ask me stupid fucking questions, first of all. Don't fucking open your mouth ever again.
Now imagine being me and reading this alone and suffering and then having to keep it a secret for 5 years or whatever the fuck it is to get you to read it. And I'm like, no, you don't understand, man. You don't understand. They're soulmates, man. And then fucking, when he puts the hat on Jinwoo, I'm gonna kill myself.
I know!
Oh! Oh!
It's
And
too
his
much.
move to
There's
kill him,
too many-
his move to kill him is his boulder chest crushing
Yeah.
move. Oh!
I was like, why'd you bring that back up?
Cause he's
This
he loves the
entire
common man.
This entire fucking chapter was callbacks.
Yes, that's all. Oh, it's so good, bro. That. Oh my god, I can't wait to read MDZS. You should let me read Remnants of Filth with you after that. After we do MDZS, because I need you to. I need you to experience Meat Bun with me.
I don't know.
It's good. It's good. Oh my god, I have so many paw prints on my fucking glasses.
Paw prints?
My hands. Fingerprints. Alright, let's play Wu Yang and hear Shilian.
No, I don't think I can handle that.
You can't play fucking